prior to filming this, I was thinking of what is the gotcha? What is the grab? What's the intro? Because, you know, I pride myself sometimes on my intros for my videos, but also it gives me anxiety because it's not every time that this brain of mine can conceptualize something that's gonna grab y'all in. So, I ain't got nothing for you except some European sunscreens and a special guest, Glow by Ramon, so keep watching. Alright, so we are going to be talking about sunscreens from UK brand ALTRUIST, which was started by a dermatologist. We're going to let Glow by Ramon tell us a little bit more about this because I'm not very familiar with this brand, but by the end of the video, if you also weren't very familiar with this brand, you might be like, okay now. It's affordable. Boom, we love that. It's cosmetically elegant. We also love that as well. There's some high UVA and UVB coverage in these as well. Boom, boom, boom. There's also one that's anti-redness and anti-pigmentation. So we are going to take it away with my conversation with Glow by Ramon. I actually thought that this was kind of cool. So let me know below what you think of a video like this, because it's like, you know, normally you get my opinion on a sunscreen, but I do think it's kind of cool to hear two people who are equally as passionate about sunscreen usage to talk about, you know, some sunscreens. And we have different skin tones, so that's another thing too. So anyway, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, us. I'm glad that we can do this because you're someone I look to when I want to learn more about UV filters. You know, you're just amazing.
Thank you.
Would that be considered like a drugstore brand? Is this a store, or what's up with the brand?
So it's not available in stores necessarily. It's not like I can go to our version of Dwayne Reed over here and buy it. You have to order online, but the pricing itself is very much drugstore. These, I think the most expensive one is £8, which is like $10 USD.
Right.
But they're like 4, 5, 6 pounds. So super, super accessible. And the thing is, especially for the tube ones, you get a lot of product in those.
All right, so I figure we will start with, I'm not even sure what to start with. Let's start with the face fluid. So the face fluid, ALTRUIST dermatologist, face fluid SPF 50, water resistant, fragrance free, and it also says it's non-comedogenic. So what was your experience with this? And then I'll share mine.
It's super lightweight. This is one of those sunscreens where I'm like, oh, it's like a European formulation. It is surprisingly really elegant, sinks in right away. Wear of it throughout the day is really, really nice. And this one, I believe, out of the 4 options I gave you, is my favorite for reapplication for sure. But formulation-wise, it's also, I think, the best option for oily, acne-prone skin, and that's what I have. You have niacinamide and vitamin E in there to give you some extra ingredient boost too, but this was, I think, my favorite out of the 4 that I gave you.
Yeah, I have to echo those sentiments. I did find that this was my favorite out of all 4. I love this kind of sunscreen texture and formula where it's lightweight. I did find it a little like a little much at first, because like when you try to, and it could also be like packaging and things like that, which I'm not going to like take points off or anything like that.
I will say, I think they did repackage this because the packaging on the ALTRUIST website is like a squeeze tube now instead of this like bottle.
Yeah, because I do feel like a little bit like it can be a little runny, and I do like a runny sunscreen, but I do worry that, you know, are people going to put enough on because it glides so well. Definitely lightweight. I'd say that it had like a satin matte finish, but it wasn't greasy. It's not matte, you know, and sometimes we don't know. I have oily skin as well. Sometimes we don't want like a super matte finish. But, you know, we don't want it to be extremely dewy because that's just not going to hold up all day. And I would say, again, you know, echo the sentiment that you spoke about with reapplication with something like this, because it is so lightweight and it does go on really nicely on the skin. To be honest, I just tried these blindly. I didn't look at anything. I didn't look at filters. I didn't look at some of the claims that were other than what was like yelling at me from the packaging. So what filters are in here?
So the thing with the Altruist is developed by a dermatologist and a skin surgeon who wanted to create very elegant, very cost effective, but also very high strength, high efficacy, like high octane sunscreens
Mm.
that specifically were going to be good for preventing skin cancer. I guess both of them had experiences around skin cancer, and therefore they're like, obviously sunscreen is one of the most proven, most beneficial tools, so let's develop a very good sunscreen.
Mm.
With that, the big component with sunscreen is obviously the filters that you use. It's a European brand, so you can use a lot of the more innovative filters. But with their options, they do a good mix of some of the more well-established FDA approved filters and the like innovative, fun European filters. So you have like the avobenzone, octosalate, octocrylenes, but then you have ingredients like insulazole. Insulazole is a really nice filter for these very lightweight, really runny sunscreens. That's where you're most likely going to find it.
Mm-hmm.
But then they pair it with Tinosorb S and Tinosorb M,
Mm-hmm.
which that Tinosorb M was the reason I wanted you to try these out and why I was like, let me send this to Danielle.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It is a chemical filter by composition. It has carbon in it. That's the structure of it. It's a
Mm.
chemical filter. But the way it works, the mechanism behind it is more similar to a mineral filter. It's a non soluble particle, so it's a
Mm.
solid particle that is suspended in the formulation. And while it does absorb and convert UV energy back into the form of heat, like every other filter does, it does also reflect a little bit of
Mhm.
light in the same way a mineral filter does. Anytime you get reflection involved in a filter, that's when you get a white cast, though, and that's when that concern comes up. So I was interested in you trying these out and applying them. And then
Yeah.
these do also combine titanium dioxide as well. So you are getting some more like standard mineral filters in there as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I didn't have any white cast with this. I would have never have guessed that it had something. I would have never. Well, then again, I've seen some sunscreens that have titanium dioxide mixed with some of the chemical UV filters, where it's still cosmetically elegant, it's not showing up all ashy on my skin. So I definitely think that this one was really good, and knowing that the price point like you said, under $30 shipped for all four. So
Mhm.
I'm liking that price point. And then I feel like we share a lot of followers that come from the UK. So learning that, because the mineral sunscreens aren't so easy to come by from what I'm understanding. Yeah, okay.
I see that a lot.
Yeah. So while it's not per se a mineral sunscreen, it might be a great option. Of course, you guys do a patch test. We don't throw things on our skin and then like hope and give thoughts and prayers that it doesn't break us out. So definitely patch test. All right. So since we're on face, might as well go to this one. So this is the Altruist anti-redness and pigmentation SPF 50 visible light protection. So we've got some iron oxides in here, but important to note, iron oxides aren't the only material that protects against visible light. So what really drew me in with this, of course, was the anti-pigmentation. Um, but also what confused me was like, okay, how are you gonna, address redness and pigmentation at the same time? Though they're both a result of like inflammation, but typically you see redness in someone with a lighter skin tone. Not to say that people with deeper skin tones can't get that, inflammatory kind of response on their skin, but it just doesn't show up as red. So I was like, oh, this is interesting. Then I opened her up and I was like, yo, this joint is green. The cast was very aggressive at first. You have facial hair. I mean, I don't have much facial hair, but I definitely have lots of thick edges, and it does kind of get caught in there. So that can be a deterrent for anyone with like facial hair. Would love to hear your thoughts on it. But the visible light protection definitely was really great. I think if you're someone who doesn't mind putting a little bit of makeup on, now I know sometimes the minute I mention makeup on my channel, sometimes people are like, click, unsubscribe, block, go away, no, don't want it. But if you don't mind putting a little bit of maybe a face powder that also may contain iron oxides in it, or some sort of foundation to kind of bring down the cast, it's not bad.
This was an interesting one, and also one of the ones I was like, I need her to try this. So, as you mentioned, it comes out green, and the primary reason for that being is green is great for color correcting and neutralizing redness in medium to fair skin tones.
Right.
And and I don't know if you're going to show a swatch for this, it comes out green, but once you massage it, it starts to work into a different color. On me,
Yes, I
it
noticed
turned
that.
into a beige.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, so is this like a technology like that matches skin tone? I don't know how this works.
Yeah.
And on me, the color was fine. The thing is, it was just really emollient. It was really greasy and it got really creasy really quick. Like under eye, smile lines, it was just not a cute experience.
Yeah.
This was when I think when I tested it, I didn't have to put on foundation. I think I just set and went on top of it with everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those things where it's like, if this is good for a certain type of person, if you have very considerable redness, a good option to try.
Mm-hmm.
If visible light protection is important to you, good option to try. If you don't mind a cast, worth trying potentially.
Right.
But overall, yeah, it was an interesting experience for me, and I wanted to see specifically for you when you applied this if that color converting technology adjusted for a wider range of skin tones or not.
It tried. You know, the thing is, I've seen a lot worse. So I wouldn't say that this was like a complete fail. It's just that it's not going to be transparent. And it's not also the easiest thing to blend into the skin. And when I say that, I mean like it takes a little elbow grease to kind of really get that to blend into your skin. My skin in particular doesn't like a lot of friction. Like it's just like, no, stop. So I like things that can like really blend into my skin, very easily. But I would not rule this out again for someone who is looking for that visible light protection. You're looking for something that is, not going to break the bank. I also wore this to the gym as well as, I had one on one side, one on the other. No stinging of the eyes, which is great, but that's subjective. That can happen to, some people may still get stinging or whatever. But it held up really well. This doesn't say that it's water resistant, but it held up very well. I was in a hot gym, doing my Kanye workout plan. I would say not bad, but you have to really like fit into a certain category. This is not going to be for everyone. So the SPF 30, it says it has high UVA and UVB protection, fragrance free, non-sticky. My notes was that it's extremely creamy. I would not like this for my face. I have oily skin on my face, but I have drier skin on my body. So typically the moisturizer or sunscreen that I use for my face is going to be, pretty different from my body. So I preferred this for the body. It's very thick and creamy. You got to give this a chance though, because when you first put it on, it's like, what the cast? But if you blend it out, give it a little bit of time. For some people who are like if you're in a rush in the morning, this is probably not going to be the sunscreen for you unless you don't mind like patches on your skin because you really need to take the time to rub this out. No cast though once you rub it in. But I did notice that like and I'm not quite sure what filters are in it. And hopefully, we can talk about that. But I did notice that it accumulated on like the darker parts of like my knees where my skin is darker and thicker. And on my elbows, I had to kind of rub it in a little bit more. My knees even more so than anything. But it wasn't bad. So I think if someone, depending on what, the filters, what you say about the filters, I think for someone who, likes a mineral, if there's some sort of mineral aspects in here, that this might be a contender for the body. Because mineral body sunscreens, at least the ones here in the US, I mean, some of them won't give you a cast, but it will definitely take like 2 to 3 notches off of your skin's radiance. Like your skin's just not gonna radiate. So what were your thoughts?
I didn't get the fact that it was like really like a greasy texture necessarily. But did
Yeah.
you use this as a moisturizer or did you use this on top of a moisturizer?
All in its own.
Okay.
So I didn't add any. It was too like the texture was too thick for me to put a moisturizer on underneath anyway.
Yeah, I wouldn't have done
Yeah.
that anyways.
Yeah.
Um, I found this was actually a decent option. I don't mind a very moisturizing texture, especially because I think I primarily tested this with makeup, and I also, knowing it was water resistant, usually anytime I see water resistant, my first assumption is, oh, this is going to be a little bit more rich.
Right.
But I actually kind of like this one overall for a daily sunscreen. I say daily just because it's technically SPF 30, but all things considered, the protection factors behind it are like pretty heavy duty. It's to be very elegant. I didn't have an issue with the cast either. It worked into my facial hair, I think, fairly easily. But as you mentioned, this does actually have some mineral action up in there. This does have nano titanium dioxide and nano Tinosorb M, along with octosalate, avobenzone, octocrylene. So look at a little bit of both worlds in there, so it's not completely mineral, but I like this one. This one was actually a good option.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. I think maybe in like because we're heading into summer here, so maybe in the winter time I would consider putting it on my. You know what? No, I wouldn't. And I'll tell you why. Because I was like thinking like maybe in the winter. I was like, no, it's like it's a texture thing for me. For my face, I just like things that like lightweight. Maybe it's like a gel, maybe it's a light liquid. Something like this, even though it doesn't like once, it dries down, it's not incredibly, like I wrote that it had a satin finish to it. So it's not dewy and it's not matte. But that texture on my face, I wouldn't like it. So I can't lie. But if for people who have drier skin or maybe someone like you who likes things that are more moisturizing, it's a good contender because look how much you get. It's 200 milliliters. There's 200 milliliters in here, so that's quite a lot of sunscreen. And again, the price can't be beat.
That's £4.50, which is like $5.
What? Wow. Okay. And then the SPF 50. So I did not notice a difference between the formulation between the 30 and the 50. They both felt like extremely identical to me in terms of texture, performance, how they looked on my skin. It was like pretty much the same. I would definitely probably use the 50, like if I know I'm going to be out more, and then the 30 for like a everyday kind of like, and when I say every day, it's not like every day that I spend, outdoors. Certain days I might be outdoors more than others. I'd pick up the 50. What are your thoughts?
I thought it was a little bit more rich than the SPF 30. And with my experience with using it specifically, I use these to prep for makeup. And then also I would test specifically if these could reapply on top of makeup really well with just like using a sponge to reapply it on top. This one I had the worst experience in that regard.
Okay.
But again, it's one of those things where it's like, it is a high protection factor. And speaking specifically, the UVA rating on this is really high. It's a UVA PF rating of 54, which is really, really, really high, actually.
Yeah. What is that scale? Because I'm only familiar with PA and then, of course, our SPF.
That's the thing. PA really only covers a small window of the overall UVA PF scale. And I don't think generally you see a lot of sunscreens get up into even the 40s, let alone the 50s. I know when they were originally advertising it at a certain rating, Perito being SPF 50 plus, PA 4 pluses, had a PA rating or a PPD rating of about 20 something, and that was for a daily sunscreen very high. So this being a heavy duty sunscreen, having a 54 is arguably like, again, very, very high strength, very heavy duty sunscreen. It's made by a dermatologist and a skin surgeon to help combat cancer, and this I think is like the really heavy duty option. So this one is very good protection, but as a result of that, they use a few more filters in this than they use in the SPF 30. And I think that is what for me contributed to a little bit of a less elegant texture, but it's still a very nice texture.
You want to know something? So I didn't notice a cast with reapplication on these. Now I primarily tested these on the body. I tried them on my face, but I'm like, I don't like the texture. But I primarily tested on my body, and I love that I could reapply and not notice. Okay, now it still takes a little while to kind of like rub it in. So you want to make sure that you have enough time when you're using something like this. But knowing that with the that it rates a 54, I would love this as like a beach kind of. This is 100 mils, and I'm gonna assume that this is maybe around the same 4 pounds or so.
Four
Yeah.
pounds, yeah.
Um, and I would definitely wear this to the beach, like no problem.
I will say for reference, the face fluid, the one that you really like,
Mhm.
also a UVA PF rating of 54.
Oh, nice.
So
Nice. Now let me ask you as a formulator. Let me ask you a question. At some point, I heard that sometimes, and now I know that's not necessarily true because we have so many different formulations around the globe that we have access to. But when you get higher in an SPF, is it harder to make a sunscreen more elegant?
that's dependent on a few different factors.
Hmm.
Realistically, it's the type of formulation. So with formulas, as you're building things that are specifically emulsion, so that's like oil and water mixed together,
Hmm.
you have oil and water, and then you have water and oil, where that is telling you what phase is going into the primary phase, and that primary phase kind of determines the texture.
Hmm.
So oil and water is more water based. Those are the lighter weight, gel textures. They're a lot more comfortable on the skin. Those you can get higher SPF ratings on those, but it's dependent on a lot of other factors. With water and oil, the oil phase is the primary phase in that, and so those are going to be more of the rich emollient textures. But as a
Hmm.
result of that, you're generally going to have with sunscreens a lot easier of a time getting higher SPF ratings and that kind of stuff. Also, specifically with chemical filters, a lot of them are oil based, they're lipid soluble. And so that in itself can attribute to a certain texture thing. So, generally, when you see a water resistant sunscreen that has really high ratings,
Hmm.
those are going to be the ones that are very emollient, kind of
Hmm.
greasy, heavier on the skin.
Hmm.
But can you work around that? Definitely for sure. You can add things like mattifiers and oil absorbers into the formulation to help out. And iron oxides can also do their thing. These specifically, and I think why they are a little bit more elegant, is that they are combination sunscreens. So you do
Hmm.
have some of the mineral filters in there, and then the hybrid filters like Tinosorb M, along with some more lightweight filters like the Insolazole we talked about.
Yeah.
So because of that, I think that's why these are elegant. And I guess to answer your question, generally elegance goes out the window the higher the SPF rating, but
Right.
is that always the case? No.
So, given that, is that why you'll see a lot of alcohol in, say, some of like the Japanese sunscreens because that makes it a little bit more lightweight?
Yeah, so 100%. That is a really big factor in creating an elegant sunscreen. And I know people don't like alcohol, but when alcohol's in a formulation, generally 99.9% of the time, it is
Yeah.
there to serve a function in the formulation with ingredients.
Hmm.
Alcohol itself is a good solvent for non water soluble items. So these lipid based sunscreen filters, for example,
Yeah.
and it allows those to dissolve nicely in a formulation. But also because alcohol is so volatile, meaning it evaporates really quickly, it allows the formulation to set down a lot quicker. So it is a lot more elegant and a lot better for oily skin individuals.
Okay. So ultimately, it's great that there's so many different options out there for everybody, regardless of, I like alcohol, or no, I like something that's really creamy and emollient, or no, I want something mattifying. It's really great that we have, I mean, it could be really confusing having all these options out here, but it's really great. So I would have to say, especially for a lot of my UK folks, that maybe this is a brand to look into. But of course, if you're someone who has like really sensitive skin and you're very particular about, certain filters, of course, definitely check out the ingredients. But also, if you're unsure, patch test. Because again, guys, we don't just slap stuff on the skin and then just hope and pray that it's not going to have some sort of irritation. Do a patch test first. That's like the smartest way. If you guys are looking for additional sunscreen information, like broken down, Ramon's channel, like I know a lot of times when I'm talking in my videos that I'll reference Ramon's channel because he's just, it's intelligent information about sunscreens, but it's entertaining. Like you get the best of both worlds. I love it. I love it. I do like to be able to learn about, you know, things that we don't have available here in the United States from you. So I'm so happy that I came across your channel last year. All right, you guys. So again, let me know what you thought about this video. I thought it was kind of cool. I mean, I think anything I'm involved in is kind of cool, you know what I'm saying? But anyway, no, I thought this was kind of cool because, well, for one, these sunscreens were really interesting. I learned a couple of things. Did you learn anything? Let me know in the comments below. But I liked having the perspective of two creators who are both passionate about sunscreen, two different skin tones, talking about, you know, these sunscreens. And I think although we both had similar experiences, there were some things that were a little bit different. I thought that was kind of cool. So let me know if you like that. There will be a part 2 in this. There will be a part 2 because there are more sunscreens. Like, he sent me a big old box of sunscreens. So there will be more, and of course more other sunscreen content here on this channel. Follow me on social, links will be in the description box. Turn that notification bell on, boom, bam, boom, biz-ow. And I'll see you in my next one. Bye, guys.